Dr. Jazz. Dr. Jazz.
No, but I've been listening to your music for such a long time, and
Wow.
you've been playing with some of my favorite musicians for.
Yes, I noticed. As a matter of fact, I discovered after you asked me to do that that I have heard a couple of your CDs anyway, and then went to your site and discovered that you played like with bunch of my
Yeah,
friends and colleagues that I love to play with. So great,
Yeah.
we share the same tastes and
that's a good thing,
something
right?
nice. That's nice.
Yeah. I just wanted to first ask you, like, I saw this duo footage you still actually played on my birthday on 9th of October with Matthias Schubert in duo. And
Actually, you switched it on the 9th of October. I played the solo in Love.
oh, that was the solo, yeah.
But a week before that,
Oh, that was like, yeah.
I played with Matthias. Yeah. As a matter of fact, funny, I just started yesterday listening through the whole material. It out on at least on Bandcamp.
Oh, okay. Oh, you recorded everything, or?
Yes.
Ah, super. Yeah, I wanted to ask you, like, also your solo stuff. I checked. You've been really involved in Herbie Nichols, and
Yes, especially early. I mean,
Yeah.
of course, I still love his music. Yeah.
I mean, I love his stuff. That Dance Line and Star Tempest and all those compositions. I love that stuff. He's like the underrated,
Genius stuff.
the most underrated composer and piano player. I wanted to ask you, how did you get involved into his music first?
Herbie's music.
Yeah.
I believe it started when I was living in New York, and there was such a thing as going to shops and going through LPs. I chanced upon the first of the two recordings that Misha Mengelberg recorded in quintet, in quintet
Herbie's music.
section. And, well, the first one was half Monk, half Herbie Nichols.
Oh, okay.
And I was just discovering Misha Mengelberg for his own activities, and of course Monk. I knew Monk.
Yeah, sure.
We're talking 1985, I believe he brought out. I think this first one. But I didn't know anything about Herbie Nichols at the time. But I bought this LP and it knocked me out. Also Herbie stuff. So I went right away and found the reissue of those two officially released Blue Note trio recordings. So that totally made me crazy about that. And then a year or two later, I did quintet LP entirely with
really? I have to check it out. I don't know. Oh, wow.
Herbie Nichols material, and I was done. After that, I became a total fan of his music. And back then, there was nothing released in terms of
sheet music.
Yeah, so luckily.
So you wrote it down and everything.
Yeah, that was a good way to do it.
Yeah.
And a little bit later, I met Misha personally in Amsterdam, and we talked about that. That was like our first connection, So I was fascinated, and of course, he did some fantastic arrangements for ICP orchestra of Herbie Nichols music. So that's how it started.
And then you decided to play this also solo, basically, right? You did like those.
Yeah. Yes.
3 sets, basically. Yeah. How is it solo piano? I mean, I started playing solo guitar like 2 years ago, like kind of, I don't know, and I was quite scared in the beginning, because it's like, maybe piano it's different, but like at least to stand alone on the stage with your instrument How do you feel that?
Well, I can imagine that for some people, some pianists, switching going completely solo is also a bit of a daunting task. But for me, it wasn't so. You see, I was brought up being prepared for big solo classical piano career.
Okay, it's different.
So this thing alone already somehow psychologically, but also purely instrumentally, kind of prepared me. So it was a quite a natural thing for me. I played my first solo concert, like improvising and jazz, when I was like 21 or 22 in Soho, you know, in one of the remaining, you know, from this loft scene, one of the last venues there. Maybe I was 21 even, and you know, probably it was not a terribly successful musical concert, but I felt okay, you know, it was natural. And the pivotal point for my solo thing was a few years later, I went to Banff, you know, this great jazz workshop in 1986. And besides playing with all kinds of, you know, participants, you guys, I wanted to play. I gave a solo concert, and for some reason, I think because, you know, because Banff is such an inspiring experience. You know, suddenly my also conceptual approach to solo playing went like that. So from that moment on, I never looked back. You know, and I've been always playing regular solo different things, Herbie's, my own stuff, like months ago, or Brazilian,
you've been really
all kinds of stuff. So
you mentioned Soho now, and 21. I wanted to ask you, like, I mean, I've read that you studied in Juilliard School of Music.
When I, together with my parents and even grandma, we all immigrated in 1979. At that time, my education officially wasn't finished because I was thrown out of the Moscow Conservatory upon the wish, you know, to immigrate.
Sure.
Soviets didn't like this.
I know. Yeah, I was in Yugoslavia, man. So
so you know what I'm talking about. So, you know, before even adjust and decide anything else, the logical thing for me was to enter Juilliard School as a classical pianist, at least to be in some kind of environment, you know, trying to continue life in a completely different circumstances. So yeah, I went to Juilliard then.
And how was I mean, talking about the early 80s, right? New York. How was it for you as a classical musician, or coming from Moscow, seeing that jazz scene back then in the 80s? How was it for you, like this integration process musically? I mean, jazz-wise.
Well, it was a very long process and not very straightforward because first, you know, the studies in Juilliard, at that time there was no jazz studies.
Right? Sure. Yeah.
So it was trying somehow to cope with different for me even approach how professional musicians but also students went about being musicians, because I was a product of Soviet Union approach, which it was a completely different thing, you know. Back then, being an artist, musician, that was something, wow, fantastic, you know. You know, you were on the path of the envious career, you know, where, you know, and then you get to New York, and you're like, you know, this is, of course, the status of being student as a Juliet somehow
Yeah. Okay.
something better, but otherwise, like jazz or like by that time I was a big fan already of new music, so in Soviet Union it was a big rebellion, like, and you were really hip and like way ahead of everybody if you were talking about Boulez or Thousand and all those guys.
Yeah.
But in New York it was like, you could see like LPs punched with holes for $1.99, with this music. It was a complete turn around in terms of values,
Yeah.
So that part of it was very difficult to swallow, to accept and adapt. That took a long time, And then I kind of buried myself for a moment in doing this classical stuff, and also immediate surroundings, besides Wynton Marsalis and Lindsay Horner, the bassist. There was nobody else really playing jazz, like being interested. So, and in the beginning, I could not afford going as often to jazz clubs as I wanted, and I was not, and I didn't know enough people who would sometimes would let me in, like that. So the process of actually getting sucked into this fantastic, of course, even back then it was the New York jazz scene, took a moment, I mean, I'll give you, I mean, we were immigrants without one extra dollar in the pocket for a while. So I came end of 1979, and I remember in 1980, throughout that year till his death, Bill Evans Trio played a lot in Village Vanguard. And every time, of course, I wanted to go, but I think he's playing. Probably I see again in a few weeks. Right now, I can afford $10 plus drinks, and and then he died in the autumn of that year, and I never got to hear Bill Evans, like stuff like that. So, but was as time progressed, I figured out the ways to go more to the concerts and meet more musicians. But it was a long process. Also for me to orient myself musically, because when I came from Moscow to New York, in my musical jazz music suitcase, there was only stride piano and classical bebop.
Okay.
Beyond that, I had no. I mean, very. Of course, I heard McCoy, but I didn't have any personal experience with the styles, and everything was new. I had to learn and try to catch up so much that time. So it was.
Do you remember some of the first concerts you saw that kind of blew your mind back then?
You mean in New York?
In New York, yeah.
Oh, I remember two things that I heard. I guess the first week we got to New York. One was, because I, in between leaving Moscow and coming to New York, there was an in-between stop in Rome.
Okay.
I stayed for a bunch of months because one had to get visas and
of course.
And I was lucky to become for a moment a house pianist in a jazz club, Mississippi Jazz Club. And I started playing with this great American Italian clarinet player Tony Scott.
Sure.
He was a grandiose, very important figure back then. But at that time, he was living already in Rome, and he was my first boss. So when my departure to New York was approaching, he kept saying, don't fail to go all the time to Bradley's.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Go to Bradley's, and back then Bradley's was the mecca, the best piano-based duo club. That was before drums became, allowed there. It was just strictly duo. That I went straight away there, and it was Tommy Flanagan with George Mars playing there.
Oh wow, beautiful!
And because George Mars, of course, much earlier, but also left
from the Czech,
yeah. I approached him, and introduced myself, and he said, "Oh, next week, come by and sit in,"
Oh,
so that was the first time, and a few days later, I went to the big jazz concert in now no longer existing club called Bottom Line.
Oh yeah.
And it was a double bill. It was Johnny Griffin Quartet and Dexter Gordon Quartet.
Oh wow!
And that was like
the legends. Yeah,
sensational. It's really so. Those two concerts like stayed with me.
Yeah,
of course. Anyway, but there were so many. I mean, as I said, the more I figured out how to do it, very often, at least back then, it was possible. Nowadays, I think not anymore. At Village Vanguard, you could go through the door and stand on the stairs.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, you were not thrown out.
Okay.
Today, you don't even get to.
Yeah, sure.
Go past this door, because there's a guy standing outside. But back then, so there was a whole clique of people. That's how I met a lot of young musicians, because we would be standing out there checking out, because the door downstairs was not so soundproof.
Yeah.
So and or like in every club, bigger club, which was expensive at that time for me, or I wasn't connected yet. There was a way to stand right by the door or in between, and that's how we learned. But Bradley's, when I came to New York, Bradley's at that time didn't even have a charge.
Oh yeah.
Then shortly after that, they started charging $5 on a weekend, like that. But it was still doable.
Yeah.
Plus, of course, it was my university, as for many other pianists, and not only pianists, So we would go there and hang out, and it was the club that closed latest, So sometimes you would sit at the bar, and it was already late, and all the musicians who already finished with their gigs, they would converge and hang out in Bradley. So sometimes you would sit there, Roland Hanna, hey, somebody else, there were some fantastic musicians just checking out the music.
Yeah. That's amazing. I'm really interested with your connection to the New York scene, because like I said, you've played, I think, I checked some of the rhythm sections. I mean, I have you on so many albums. I don't know, I want to talk about some of these, but you've played with some of the best drummers and bass players, and also horn players there are on the scene there. And I just wanted to ask you, who were the first musicians that you got to play with in the 80s? I mean, how did you meet all these guys like Mark Helias and Tom Rainey and,
it's not like there was a day where
I can imagine.
Up and I just said, well, come up. It was a gradual thing. With Tom Rainey, who is, of course, one of my favorite musicians, drummers. The experience of meeting him, I'll never forget. There was couple of people with the time started to tell me, yeah, you know, as it will happen in the scene. Yeah, check out this, you know, piano. Check out that. So I started hearing about. Yeah, you really need to check out Kenny Werner.
Kenny Werner.
I never heard, but then I caught. I guess it was in the 84, 83, something like that. I saw the ad that Kenny Werner Trio playing 3 nights at the club on the lower side, west side, I guess, up Prescott. It doesn't exist since million years, you know.
Okay.
And I went there. It was the classical first trio with Reijseger Harris on bass and Tom Rainey, and that was revolution. Absolutely, that really killed me. You know, I had some favorite pianists before, you know, who I admired from afar, or even closer, experiencing them in Bradley's and so on. But that was on another level. I mean, I was awestruck, you know, and I mean, Kenny was, you know, fantastic drummer, but I was like checking out this drummer who he had a super deadpan, very serious face, but the music, you know, and what he was doing was absolutely amazing. I didn't understand a third of what they were doing, but I said to myself, one day when I get better, I want to play with this drummer, that's for sure. And you know, the thing is that Kenny became kind of well, guru, not guru, but for a while he was like a
mentor, or
yeah. But then we became friends. You know, we would hang out. You know, I never took one formal lesson with him ever, but I learned a lot that I wanted to learn and emulate him. You know, he had such a different approach, and I wanted to understand what's going on there. You know, so I was just hanging out every time he played, and we would talk a lot. And he was kind enough to share also. He was just in the process of starting to formulate this, you know, effortless mastery concept.
Mastery. Yeah,
it was long before he put it down in the book. But I mean, it was German. Yeah, very much so. So he was bouncing these concepts and ideas off me also. So because I was trying to understand how he sits like Buddha-like, and everything is happening here, you know, without any, you know, the chaotic ride, you know, and sleeping and sliding. I mean, everything is like. This is what I wanted to go after, you know. So that's why, even long after I was not asking questions anymore, he remains up to today. Somebody I really deeply appreciate and you know, really dig how he plays. So that's, and with Tom Rainey, you know, we met. But for a couple of years nothing happened, and then I remember I was playing in some kind of strange off or Broadway adaptation of something. Don't even. But you know, you gig in New York, whatever you do, and the regular drummer couldn't do it in the last moment. And by that time, I heard and knew that Tom can come in and eat it up, you know, like side reading anything. So I called him to jump in, and he came in and like smoked, whatever. You know, there were some arrangements. You know, he like took care of it, like absolutely. So that was the first moment, and since then, still being in New York, whenever, which was not very often, I had some kind of trio gig or whatever. I started asking him, you know, to come in. So that was the beginning of that relationship. And with guys like Helias that came later. It came later. But I met, it's a little bit convoluted story, but anyway, I was playing with a couple of groups which were rehearsing in one particular space in a very famous so-called the Cable building. That was like house in Broadway. It's sadly famous because in 1911, I guess, it was a huge fire of that building, which caused new regulations in the whole state of New York.
Okay.
And they had a bunch of rehearsal spaces, and so the same spot was also shared by Randerson.
Okay.
Where I started meeting him and sometimes Jerry Hemingway.
That's how it's all.
Helias, and of course, a couple of years later, that was already when I moved to Germany. I became client, so as I started working with an agent who was long-standing agent of Randerson.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how it came that I became a member of Ray Anderson's quartet.
Yeah.
Mark Helias was a member of at that time, and on and went like that. So
yeah.
It's different stories, of course.
No, I love the trio with Mark and Tom. It's I mean, those guys have been playing together as Open Loose, as Mark's trio.
Yeah.
And they're just like, I mean, I played with them. I did one album with them, and with Tony also on sax. We recorded everything. It was my first album in New York, everything in 2 hours. First takes, and I was just like, what, this is how this works, I mean, Mark and Tom, they just like, I was just like,
yeah, of course. It's one of the greatest tandem, rhythm groups in that section of music. For sure, yeah.
But I wanted to ask you, like, I don't know, I spoke with Tom about this one, like also about this Steady Now and other records you did with Tom, the duo. Yeah. I mean, like, how did you, first of all, when I played quite some with Tom also, and I'm still surprised every time I listen to his impros, how determined he is when he does something, I asked him that, like, I don't know, I listened the other day to, I think the trio with Mary and Ingrid Laubrock and Mary Halvorsen. Sure. Then he just starts one concert just with a snare, like, whoosh. And he goes on like that for two minutes. And I wanted to ask you, how do you approach free improv with him, or in general, like, how to get in the zone and stick behind something you play?
Well, by the time we recorded this one, the duo, we already known each other also musically for quite a while.
Yeah.
Even though never have played free before that session, where
really?
It was always something, a lot of it like with my trio.
Yeah.
Also quintet, where, Master Margarita and all stuff like that. But that was my spontaneous idea, because we were in Hamburg, both playing with the Hamburg radio big band.
Okay.
Doing a project, and because I was there as unofficially, almost practically second pianist, besides the official pianist, who is also great. I kind of had connections to just spontaneously say, hey, could we, after our daily work, which ends at 2:00, can we have stay for a few hours in the studio and somebody records us? And they said, okay, let's do it. And I'll never forget, because we never did it. We set up, and then Tom went, so what are we going to play? Because he never experienced, at least me,
Yeah,
you know, in
and
a
the complete
pre-improvised thing. But I have to say, I had absolutely no doubt in my mind that there's going to be a great session.
yeah.
And that we're going to put it. And we only had also a couple of hours, you know, to do something. And then so yeah, with Tom, I love it. I mean, but you know, by that time and still, we have a common language of sorts. So somehow I learned so much from him in terms of rhythm, but also dramaturgical approach and this and that. And by now, and already since long time, if I may say, so, we have a pretty telepathic, you know.
Yeah, it sounds like it, definitely. Yeah,
which
definitely.
Of course with Tom, it's possible, and so many people have this connection with him, you know. But by that time, there were no, you know, like, and so I mean, he kind of just brought in this phrase, you know, like just the fact that we never did it before, but once we started playing, there was absolutely no, you know, like questioning, or that. It felt very good, and we were very happy with it right away.
No, it sounds amazing.
Well, thanks. I mean, we sometimes talk about trying to repeat, you know, and we did play some duo concerts in Europe after that, but it never led to anything, you know.
Yeah.
So, but maybe, and you know, frustrating thing after so many years, because this year, I was firmly planning to be in New York for a month. There were a bunch of concerts organized and a new recording, and one of them would be a dual concert with Tom. So we were looking forward to our dual reunion, but you know.
It will happen again. I mean,
I really hope so. Yeah.
Yeah, at least, you know, on some fronts it's getting better now. Let's hope health-wise it will also get better.
Yeah.
So.
Yes. You're right.
Yeah. But Simon, I wanted to ask you, like I said, you played with so many different rhythm sections, like we mentioned Helias and Rainey. I mean, yeah, but you know, you played with Drew Grass and Tom and Barry Guy and Jerry Hemingway and you know, Mike Serin and all these, Gerald Cleaver and Pascal, and I you know, I've played with so many of these guys as well, and it always changes the way I play also or compose. And I wanted to ask you, what does, for instance, a change in the rhythm section like change for you as a composer and as an improviser?
Well, I don't think, at least I'm not aware of, when I write tunes, you know, for this particular band, I'm not aware of consciously writing differently. On this one it will be Tom, but on this Gerald.
You don't like? Interesting. Yeah, I wanted to ask you.
As a composer, no. I guess I automatically play somewhat different or sound different in terms of overall texture and approach, depending on with which rhythm section or drama I'm playing. But as a composer, I did recently 2 quintet recordings.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about this.
In New York, which was planned as some kind of a special side project, you know, like me going to New York and calling some of my favorite places there, and also trying to find for myself a path of jazz, modern jazz music with written tunes, with enough still space to improvise, obviously, but with a clear stamp of like jazz writing, like real tunes, not little ditties to jump off or play, and also trying to curtail a little bit amount of influence from new music on something like I just really wanted to reconnect with a sophisticated modern jazz playing, and not that I couldn't do it here in Europe, but somehow that was like a specific project. Me going back to New York and jumping into this scene and those guys. So that was okay. There I tried to come up in a certain way of writing material, like having
but I wanted to ask you because like playing and that last minute theory, they're both really different. I mean, they're incredible. I love them. Seriously, man. It's so modern and I wanted to ask you about that, like how do you envision those long compositions and where is the border between sometimes improvised and composed in your tunes? Because it's like a 12-minute song. How do you?
Well, thanks for liking the music. I once again, that first of all, by now it's since a long time nothing unique. There are generations now of musicians.
Still,
but I started it way back, and I would say that has once again to do with me studying classical music. And back then, I was not only my major was not only piano, but also composition. In especially in Moscow. So longer forms, longer epic forms, especially like Russian and Soviet music with Shostakovich and Prokofiev. Like all this favorite and allowed, important word, allowed composers, because we were not exposed to everything to the full degree, unfortunately. A lot of things were kind of closed. We had to sneak in this knowledge. I was lucky with the modern music because risking a scandal, when I went to the conservatory, I became a student not of composition because he was not allowed to teach it, but of orchestration and something else with a great avant-garde composer Edison Denisov. He's one of the three. It was Schnittke, Gubaidulina, and Denisov.
I don't know him.
This was like a holy trinity of Soviet music avant-garde. So, and he had every Sunday, or almost every Sunday, for a select group of students who were interested, a meeting at his apartment. And he had such a statue that it was not a rarity that he would say, hi guys, here I just got 3 days ago a score and a cassette of a world premiere of a new piece by Boulez. Let's look at it. Because they all knew about this hunger, and so they would send him and other two great composers, material, so that they were aware and also connected with what was happening outside. So thanks to that, I had exposed that. Anyway, what I'm trying to say, I think for long extended forms with different parts and some convoluted dramaturgical thing. I think it goes back to long year experiences with symphonic grand scale works or whatever, even piano literature, like large sonatas and all that. I think it put a stamp on it,
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
Also, even though like the quintets and other CDs with some more involved compositions, which do not have to do with that, still, you probably notice, or maybe you're aware that one of the lines of what I do has to do with connecting music with literature.
Yeah. I mean, I studied literature, so I love that.
And in where I grew up, if you were involved in arts, you were reading a lot. That was part of the Soviet Union tradition. Since then, I believe it went kind of down. It's no longer, you don't see people in Moscow metro, everybody reading. It's everybody looking at iPhone.
Terrible.
So for me, it's a great outlet to write some music connected with certain literature.
Yeah, like Bulgakov, you did. That's how I found about your music also. I mean, through that first.
So, and of course, because it has stories and programmatic things, it almost automatically, it's automatic that the compositions often tend to be more extended, having more multiple parts. And
I love that.
Stuff like that. Yeah.
But how do you write, like, especially these new quintet albums? I mean, but you've done that for a long time also. It's many times it's very groove related also. If maybe, I don't know, someone groove in a sense, like this Tim Burnish kind of, amazing musicians help with this also, but like that tune Rickety on the last minute here. Ernst.
Not the last, the one before.
Yeah, and all this stuff. How do you write? What is your creative process? Do you start like with a melody? Do you start with a bass line, or on piano, or without piano, or differs?
Oh, well, sorry that I'm laughing. It now comes a big disclosure. I start by, for the longest time, having stomach aches and headaches, and it's actually, it's kind of a problem with me to get music out. It doesn't flow. I don't like sit and
like. Okay.
Unfortunately, it's complicated and sometimes even painful process. And certainly it is not structured. I start with this part of construction, like you said, the bass or whatever. It starts with a long, longest period of, I have to do something, but nothing is happening. So now you have to understand. Now you can understand the title of the CD, Last Minute Theory.
Yeah.
Because I wrote all the tunes for both of the CDs in the last 48 to 72 hours.
Seriously.
Prior of a recording, and
wow.
And I'll tell you one thing. Of it, not at all. I dream since ages to finally come to a different model of approaching it. That means starting in a calm manner, way in advance, and gathering material and like real composers, And because I studied composition, I seem to pull it off still, even in this.
Sounds amazing what you do. I mean, like, really.
Thank you. Thank you. But as I said, I'm hoping before I'm gone from this planet to do one or two projects where I really can say, I the only one where I could do it or had to do kind of like that was Master and Margarita.
Margarita, yeah.
Because it was a massive project and also a lot of responsibility that I felt towards one of, you know that it's the the most popular book in Russia ever.
Yeah, sure, it's a classic,
like the second one in the polls, I forget which novel of Dostoevsky is like, I mean, not like this, like that, below Master Margarita, it's like,
Oh, wow. So well, it is an amazing novel. I mean, that's
it is, even though nowadays you can hear some critique about that, you know, but for me it remains a masterpiece.
Yes,
and it was a responsibility, so I took a month, you know, of preparing, also putting together some kind of libretto, you know, like program, like that. But I have to say, boy, now that you publish that, everybody will know this badly hidden secret about my. It's not my approach, but it's, you know, you know, it's like I'm blocked because for ages and still today, I refuse to say, okay, this compositional toolbox, what it is, and from now on I will, you know, reassemble, change, modify, but basically, you know, I don't need to look beyond that. I appreciate toolboxes of other people, but I don't need to, you know, to reconsider but with me, I try not to have this toolbox, you know, which is, on one hand, I think is not a bad thing, but that makes it so much more difficult. Because
but as long as you get it done, that's the important, right?
But the process of starting kind of from scratch every time, and kind of selecting and sifting and throwing out, no, not that, no, that I already, you know, before that, and the main thing becomes deadline, you know. In 2 days, you know, there'll be 4 or whatever great musicians there, and you better come up with something for them. So it's, as I said, I'm not proud of it. It went in the end okay so far, but I would love to have less pressure.
I know what you mean.
And in my age, I'm mentally prepared to even have a little toolbox and work with this, you know, and see how that feels. You know?
No, but it sounds amazing. Like, I just wanted to ask you regarding these 2 quintet albums we mentioned, Plain and Last Minute Theory. How did you select the bands? Because, you know, I was really surprised on Last Minute Theory. You know, okay, Mike Formanek and Gerald, they're amazing, and you know, Tony, but then you selected Brandon Seabrook, who is, like, for me, one of the best underrated guitarists there is, and I'm surprised. I'm surprised that you selected a guitarist. I wanted to ask you about that.
Well, that was totally a conscious decision. First of all, I've been fan of Brandon since long time.
Oh, me too, like 10 years at least.
You know, more. And I thought that he would be a fantastic contrast to Tony's voice. You know, he's like a wonderfully musical, subversive guy, but at the same time totally with the program of what's going on. Well, wild, but at the same time not destructive. He's contributing. So I thought that was would be a great match, and then it turned out to be. May I do something now which I don't know if you allow that.
Oh, sure.
I'll show you something. It's not. It will be officially released in a month.
Oh, please.
But
what is it? Oh, seriously? It's a duo?
Yeah.
Oh man, you have to send me this, please.
Of course.
Where did you when and where?
We did it exactly 1 year ago, as I found out that he would be spending 1 week in Cologne or around Cologne touring with a young Truman, trombone player.
Yeah.
And there was only one window of 4 hours in his schedule where I could get him to loft, so he came over, we played.
You just improvised, or?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Oh, I'm so much looking forward to hear that.
Yeah, give me your post address, and of course.
Yeah. Please.
Of course.
Wow.
I just got it hot off the press like 3 days ago.
Oh, wow, that's beautiful. Yeah, I mean, just to go, I wanted just to ask you, like, how do you select the musicians for your bands? Like, also the quintet, like
these two quintets, as I said, I consider that, and still consider, and I hope I can continue when the madness,
that's kind of.
It was like a special side project because of doing it in New York. But also I had a very strange, maybe strange seemingly, but that was my wish. It didn't quite work out in either of those two bands, but basically I wanted to each of the quintet recording, it was supposed to be continued, with a completely different band, and if not completely, then predominantly with guys I know and admire, but never played before.
Oh, okay.
So, Michael Formanek, we would jam up in Harlem when he would take over for Reggie Workman late night jam session. So I back in I would play a little bit, but that was the only playing together. We never played for real years later. But I always wanted, and of course I was a big fan.
Yeah, he's amazing.
Back from Tim Burns band and anything. With Gerald, I already at that time played in a session with Pascal.
Yeah, exactly. The trio. Yeah.
And I loved it, and also I played a couple of times with him in New York, just concerts, in duo and in trio.
Wow, really?
Yeah. As a matter of fact, maybe if Max Johnson does a good job of mixing it, maybe we'll put at least on Bandcamp our trio set from IBM.
Oh, seriously? Oh, wow, I have to check this out. Oh, wow, amazing.
So, well, it should happen. I think he's on a good way. Anyway, and Brandon, I admired him from afar for a long time. Was a little bit scared because when I heard his like heavy metal, hardcore projects, but then I heard him in other context, so I understood that we have more than enough shared territory. And I never played one tone together with Tony, but knew and admired his playing since ages. Of course through Tom and Mark Helias, and the trio, but also other things. So that was my wish with that, and on a plane. I always loved Chris Speed, and we did work together in a project and band of Nils Wogram.
Exactly. I love those bands.
Ages ago, but otherwise, and the thing is with Chris is that I love his clarinet playing. I'm a huge fan of clarinet as an instrument anyway. You know,
Yeah.
maybe it's this work I mentioned before with Tony Scott, and then also 16 years with Perry Robinson.
Yeah.
Very,
That's
very
such a nice quartet. Yeah.
Very unique person and player. So, but anyway, so it was. I wanted really to have Chris clarinet voice on it too. And Herb is my.
Yeah, you've played a lot.
The thing is, when you asked about the beginnings of me in New York, starting to play, you know, more creative music, that was when a tenor player from Texas, Mac Goldsberry,
okay, yeah,
got me to play in his quintet, and Herb Robertson was in this quintet, and it was the first time I was playing with somebody who was in the most beautiful way nuts and crazy and you know, creative and wow, you know. So that was actually my gateway to, you know, this kind of improvised and music, you know. And we did at that time a bunch of little gigs in New Jersey, and you know, it was with Ed Schuler on bass. With whom, of course, I was working also with Perry Robinson. But this band, which never recorded, or almost never, nothing came out. That was like a key situation where I stepped into this kind of music making. You know? And Herb definitely was the key figure there. So and then we never did anything much since Master Margarita. So I thought that would be a great thing together.
So many records.
And I liked very much John Hebert.
Yeah, he's
incredible. I never played one note once again with him, but thought that, you know, having Tom would, of course, have a very solid, serious base to the whole thing. So
you kind of connected all the dots now, like the missing links.
Almost. Trying to combine this thing of loving playing of these people but making it a new experience for me. Yes, because at least half of the band every time is completely new. People to me in terms of actually making music together. So and I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I have so many questions, but I don't want to take too much of your time.
No, I have time, please.
I just have one question. You mentioned Ed Schuler, right? And I wanted to ask you about the Circle the Line with Paul Motian. How did that come along? I listened to that the other day, and
you did your homework.
Yeah, I listened, to your music, and then there are some albums that I'm like, wow, because I didn't know that one, to be honest, the Circle the Line, and then I checked a little bit, and I was like, wow, you did the trio with Paul Motian, sure, and I really wanted to ask you how that happened.
Well, that came on only thanks to Ed, because by that time we were already playing with Perry regularly, and I don't even recall ever saying to him anything like, "Oh, I wish, I wish your father would produce something with me." But he came up. I have to credit him, and I'm thankful for that. With this idea, and at some point he told his father, I'm playing now with this Russian pianist, and I think the selling point a little bit was, even though it was a jazz recording, but selling point to Gunther was that Ed, I think, described that I was coming, having like a heavy classical background, so the thing of the third stream, which his father, formulated. I think it resonated with him. So he said, "Oh, let's see." And I believe I did with Ed and some. It was a quintet. I think it was with Steve Slagle out there. A gig up in Boston, and then I got to meet Gunther Schuller, and after that, somehow he said, "Yeah, let's produce." So he produced this session, and of course, back then, Ed Schuller, on and off, was a bass player in Paul Motian band.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So he got Paul. He asked me, who do you want to get with it? And I was like, okay, you got it. So that's how it came about.
And how was it for you, like, to playing with Paul? I mean, like,
I was scared.
How was that session?
I was scared shitless. It was my first recording ever.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Even though I was already like 26.
Yeah.
But because of Soviet Union and this and that long adaptation time, that was my first real recording session, and I had no experience. I remember I was so unaware of at least a couple of hours of getting to the studio, slowly getting the sound. By the time it was time to hit, I was a wreck. I don't know how I got through session anyway, because I kind of was mentally not prepared for this. Just gliding into the actual recording, situation. So I was already internally. But I'll never forget other moment because we rehearsed once or twice up in Ed Schuller's apartment. He had back then a grand piano. He's still living today in space, but back then he had grand piano and drums. So we rehearsed there, and of course, I was trembling, nervous, meeting Paul, but he was totally cool. I mean, really cool, but I'll never forget. So he had a bag with cymbals, So he unzipped it and he went. So Simon, we never played together. I have really no idea how you play, what you play. So I brought a choice of cymbals just to see in terms of color and timbre what you like. So let's see. So this is the right cymbal I used with Bellevins. So this was a Kiss Jarrett trio, and so it went. I was like, man, any of that sounds incredible,
but that's some pressure there.
But he wasn't like dropping he really didn't need that, He really meant because each of those cymbals had a different timbre and quality, and he really was interested in my preference,
Yeah.
So I was like,
that's incredible.
It was that I'll never forget. That was pretty.
So cool. I mean, like, I just wanted to ask you one thing. Like, you've done, I think, 80 records as a leader, or 60, or as a co-leader as well, and
well, maybe 80 altogether.
But really a lot,
As a leader, like maybe 35.
But yeah, I mean, like, your scope is amazing, what you've done, and I just wanted to ask you, like, what do you prefer as a musician, being a band leader or a sideman, or how do you approach these two things?
I like both, but in terms of being sideman, I only enjoy being a sideman when the leader is strong.
Okay.
And can handle my active input, because it is okay. On a given day, I can pull myself back if it's really needed, but otherwise, I see my role as a, not somebody who is bouncing around and just serving. So in the end, only handful of band leaders kept me for a longer time, who actually welcomed to a great degree this kind of, like Nils Wogram, Matthias, Schubert, Reijseger could hang with that. Even Arthur Blythe, for whom I think I was playing a little bit too much, but he was cool. I mean, he would
Ray Anderson?
No, Arthur Blythe.
Blythe. Oh yeah. Okay, the alto.
There's unfortunately no CDs, but I toured for a few years in his quartets. Yeah.
Oh wow.
And it was also a great experience. I love the man. He was wonderful. So anyway, so I'm not your everyday's all-purpose sideman, I can. I mean, in Hamburg, big band.
Yeah.
I don't know, for other things should mean that if needed, I can reduce myself a bit. But this is not my naturel,
So but you always serve the music, I would say. I mean, like let's say Nils Wogram, like those Round Trip and Construction Field. I love those recordings. And
thank you.
You kind of. I mean,
but as I said, Nils welcomed, my kind of, like on the same plane. Playing. He was also back then writing. Actually, more involved tunes that he does today, more contrapunct, and it seems like I was for a long time right partner for that,
When did you meet Nils, by the way? Because you've done so much work together.
I wish I could name the year, but that was, one already heard about him, and before he went for 2 years to study in New York. But the moment he came back, he got in touch with me.
Okay.
Because he had a firm idea to form quartet.
The quartet. Yeah.
So I was in his quartet for a bunch of years. Then he scrapped that and formed Route 70. But as a duo, we kept going. So altogether, we were, I guess, like partners for 17, 18 years. So
that's amazing.
I mean, I forget the year, but that's already a long time ago.
Yeah, cool. Great.
And of course, somebody like Matthias Schubert, he's so strong himself in his way, he definitely loves, like pendant to his.
You played in his band, like those with Lindsay Horner and Tom, right? Tom, it was
that was quartet, which, well, he was already close friends with Lindsay. So when he wanted to form quartet, he got Lindsay, and I told him, get Tom. But once again, long after the quartet ceased to exist, we kept playing in duo with Matthias. So it's once again a very long.
Such a great player.
So it felt very good now, months ago, to reconnect in duo with him.
Yeah, beautiful, man.